cloud is really a service. Log into Azure, Microsoft Learn, and read along with us. All right, so the the Azure VMware solution is really a service that's built in Azure to help you connect your on-prem environment to a single tenant private cloud in Azure. It's a way to allow you to migrate or to extend your capabilities from your on-prem environment to Azure. Today, in this Learn module, we'll learn about the business value, the use cases, basic components, and the options that you have for connectivity. So, all right, let's move on to the next one. So what is Azure VMware Solution? Azure VMware Solution is basically your environment running in the cloud. It's a basically a VMware installation on bare metal running in an Azure data center that can be connected to your on-prem VMware environment, so that your application and your workloads can seamlessly transfer from one to the other. So you can use that when, for example, if you're in a scenario where your company's hardware lease is coming to an end, or your machines are end of life, or you've run out of capacity in your own data center, or want to shrink your data center, then you can extend your footprint to Azure using the Azure VMware solution. So you are very familiar with all the tools because it's VMware. It's vSphere, it's vSAN, it's NXT. It's all of the same things that you run on-prem, except that you now run them in the cloud. And really, it is running VMware natively. It's not an nested virtualization. It's literally VMware running in our environment. So when you're looking at your on-prem environment where you've got your vCenter, your vSphere, vSAN, NSX, everything, it connects to a single tenant in Azure, and using the Azure Resource Manager, either through the portal or through Azure CLI or Azure or PowerShell, you can deploy in that private cloud infrastructure a mirrored or a similar environment running Azure VMware solution. So vCenter, vSphere, vSAN, NSX, and any other third-party DR solutions that you may have to fail over or to protect your workloads in Azure. However, once you've got this, you can then connect them to native Azure services. The way this is architected, one of the great value proposition is you can keep your existing investment. So if you've invested a lot of time and a lot of energy and money into developing and building this infrastructure that you have on-prem, all of this investment is not wasted. We're not asking you to toss it and to move to something else. You can extend that investment into Azure. Your operations stay consistent. So the way you deploy workloads, the way you manage them, the way you back them up, all of the operational parts of your admins stays exactly the same. Also, for your business, because your licensing stays the same, everything else stays the same. You don't have to change the way your business runs because you're going from VMware to VMware. You get a single point of support, which is really, really cool. The single point of support, you call Microsoft because we're hosting it. So you call Microsoft. Yes. What?
I said they can call Pierre.
No, they don't call me. Don't call me. Then they call Amy down here. But you call Azure support, and then if need be, we'll bring in the VMware engineers to help you with your problems. You avoid licensing complexity because it's in the cloud, so you pay as you go. And really the cool thing is that if you have Azure hybrid benefits, your licenses, for example, Microsoft Windows or Microsoft SQL Server licenses may be covered if you have your Azure hybrid benefits enabled. So this is really cool. Once you've got that set up, though, you do now have access to include all of the native Azure services into your environment. So you can connect things like Azure Monitor, you can connect things like Azure Stream Analytics or Azure Search or any other of the Azure services that we have in our portfolio of offerings. You can apply those to your workloads because they're already on Azure. So connecting to those workloads becomes very, very easy. How it works.
Sure. Okay, so how Azure VMware solution actually works. Let's see. There we go. As we mentioned earlier, that shared support model, kind of that pizza box that we were saying, the take and bake versus making your own. So Microsoft handles the configuration of the physical infrastructure. We handle physical security, monitoring the data centers. And then also any hardware failures. I actually got an alert on my own environment saying, your host is, there's issues with it. We're going to remediate it for you. And nothing happened. It was seamless. It was great. So yeah, Microsoft pretty much handles all the hardware components, the patching, the stuff that you probably don't have fun doing anyways. So, and then the customer, you get to customize your OS and your apps, your VMs, and configure vCenter, but everything else is pretty much locked down because to maintain that security and that hardware profile for your environment.
So basically, we're abstracting all of the like day-to-day boring work and allowing the customers to focus on what's important.
Yes.
Is that fair?
Oh yeah, I used to be a VMware admin, and patching was not fun. Like roll a patch, maintenance mode, roll a patch, maintenance mode. This, you don't have to worry about it. So Microsoft has it all ready for you. We monitor again for issues. So they'll add a host to your cluster and remove the naughty host, and your life is good. So
good, cool.
Yeah. And then, so like I mentioned, so the monitoring and remediation. So any like high CPU or high memory or any issues with the network or power, we're going to take care of that for you.
What if it's one of your application that is like one of your workload that is basically pinning the CPU of one of your VMs? Is that something that we take care of, or is that something that you take care of?
No, that would be on the customer end. I would highly recommend Azure Monitor, or there's also vCenter Operations Manager to alert you on that. But yeah, you would be still responsible for your application, but we would we're monitoring the hosts themselves.
Got it.
Sure, if one VM was causing an issue and causing the host to fail, then we'd have to take action.
Okay.
So that being said, private clouds, clusters, and hosts in Azure. Oh my. So I just like that title. You need a minimum of 3 nodes in a cluster. And that's pretty much on par with if you have vSAN, you need 3 hosts to have a vSAN cluster. If you want to have a production cluster, you need 3 hosts. So the bare minimum is 3 hosts. You can have 16 nodes in a cluster. And then the max is 12 clusters and an Azure private cloud. So then you can have 96 nodes, which is quite a lot because these are big beasts of a machine. So
yeah, well, your 3 nodes in a cluster. I remember my days as a consultant doing a lot of DR work for companies, and we always had the N+2 model of how many in order to have redundancy. Because if you have 2, if you have 1, you have no redundancy. If you have 2, you have partial redundancy, because if 1 fails, then you no longer have redundancy. 3 is the minimum, because if you can lose 1 and still have redundancy.
Right. It definitely depends on how much you overcommit, but yeah, 3 is definitely a good way to go.
Yep. Okay.
All right. So as of now, AVS, we run 6.7 update 3 version of vCenter and ESXi. Same for the NSX version, or NSXT, sorry, that's for AVS specific. And then HCX is 4.1. So that's locked in. You can't change that because this is the service we're providing. Once they roll out the next version, this will change.
What if you have a different version on-prem? What happens then?
Well, I mean, honestly, it depends. So I've seen
the consulting answer.
Exactly, depends. What version are you running, and what are you planning to do with your workload? So it's a more of a complicated question.
Right.
I've seen where you might have to upgrade if you're behind, but if you're ahead of it, you just have to match your VM hardware version to the VMware hardware version on the AVS solution.
Okay.
You should be good to go.
Okay, perfect.
So, and then the interconnectivity in the solution. So we use ExpressRoute, but you can also use a VPN connection. It's not really, there's no SLA for that, but it's a good way to at least maybe get started, or using the Azure virtual WAN.
Well, I think the VPN connection, the reason why there's no SLA is because this is outside of our control, because you're using public internet infrastructure to connect to a VPN gateway. So the VPN gateway can be up, but if there's a failure anywhere else in the chain in the public internet, we can't be responsible for that. So ExpressRoute is definitely the more robust connection type. Or if you even have a ExpressRoute to one location that is connected to the Azure backbone, then you can actually piggyback over the Azure virtual WAN to connect to your region where your VMware solution sits.
Exactly. So this is just like a little image showing that ExpressRoute connectivity, and if you're going to use like complete on-premises connectivity, like migrations, vMotion, then you would use global reach on your ExpressRoute as well.
Okay.
And you can see like you have the edge routers directly connected in the data center. So edge-to-edge routers to give you that backbone, that really fast connectivity. And then, like we mentioned earlier, you're in the private cloud, but now you're closer to these storage services, Azure Files, Blob Storage, NetApp, Azure File Sync. And you get to use that Azure backbone that's wicked fast to connect to these services versus a VPN.
Yes, connecting to storage across a VPN connection is always slower than connecting to something that's on the same fiber than your hosts are.
Right, exactly. So we also have security and compliance. It's always important at Microsoft. So you have your RBAC roles with vSphere. You can have admin, cloud admin, and then we do data encryption at rest using provider managed keys, and it doesn't impact the vSAN at all with the encryption. So we encrypt at the storage level. We have encryption keys using the Azure Key Vault system, yep. And then your RBAC controls. So you're pretty secure.
Cool.
Yeah. And this is a great slide. But so local cloud admin can link your Active Directory to your AVS. And this is important because the spelling of cloud admin, so lowercase cloud admin, can link your identity source, Active Directory. And in AVS, administrators don't have access to the administrator account. They can, however, assign Active Directory users to the cloud capital admin role on vCenter. Not confusing at all. So, I'm reading the third bullet point. Clusters hosted. Might have to edit this out because
yeah, I'm just taking a note here.
Okay, so just private cloud. I think I would just kind of skip that bullet point. I don't know.
Okay. Well, do you have a good understanding? Because I don't.
Not of the private cloud user doesn't have access to and can't configure.
So the local cloud admin user can link an identity source so that Active Directory administrators can grant permissions to users of our solution.
AVS.
In this solution deployment, the administrator doesn't have access to the administrator user accounts. The admin can, however, assign Active Directory users and groups to the roles.
Okay, so local cloud admin can link Active Directory to use AVS, but the actual admin of AVS can assign.
Can basically pick users and groups that are in Azure directory and assign them rights inside the AVS solution.
Yeah. Okay.
So the local cloud admin actually makes the link with Azure Active Directory, and then the and then the cloud admin with the big A can use those identity from Azure Active Directory and assign them to roles and access within the within vCenter.
And I think that third bullet point is about the local cloud admin. It can't do anything except set up that identity source. Looks like
the private cloud user doesn't have access to and can configure specific management computer at that Microsoft supports. Yeah, because it's like the pizza as a service. Anything below what we were allowed, what we configure versus what you are responsible for, that private cloud user doesn't have any access to that. So you can't go and change your configuration of your nodes, your hardware nodes.
Hardware. Okay.
So your hardware, your components are like the clusters, the host, the data stores, and the distributed virtual switches. You can't control that.
Okay. Makes sense. All right. Okay. Should I go back and then or?
You can just start at it because I'll cut at the right place.
Okay. So security and of course not. So security and compliance. There's an account, the local cloud admin, that you can link your Azure Active Directory admin. You can link the source so your admins can grant permission to use AVS. So this is important to remember later. Because in AVS, the administrator doesn't have access to the administrator user account, but they can assign Active Directory users, assign users and groups to access the cloud admin role on vCenter in order to do things, because that local cloud admin user you can't modify the distributed switches or the hosts. I mean, again, we have everything locked down for you. So you would grant permissions through Azure Active Directory.
So the first account, so the cloud administrator, the cloud admin with the little a, actually makes the link to Azure Active Directory, and then the cloud admin with the big A actually uses the identity stored in Azure Active Directory to assign access and roles within vSphere. Did I get that right?
Well, kind of. The cloud capital A is a role on vCenter. So that's a role on vCenter, and you can assign people to that role. And that allows people to do, create VMs and
that makes more sense to me. Yeah. Okay.
And then I'll just briefly go over this because we have other modules that go in depth. But, obviously before deploying, you need to plan. You assess your environment with maybe Azure Migrate or vRealize Operations Manager. You have to request quota, put in a ticket in Azure, and then we'll go through the steps for registering the resource provider, creating the, deploying AVS, making sure your express routes are connected so you can use HCX and so forth. So
yeah, and it's good that you're mentioning it, especially the one about express route, because express route doesn't, it's not like an on-demand type of service. You actually have to deal with your local telco provider or whoever is giving you your access, the local provider for express route. So they actually have to either set up hardware or set up MPLS segments to connect to your environment, to our environment. So you really need to plan this ahead of time, or else you have to basically wait until that's set before you have actually connection to your environment.
Yeah, you're pretty much waiting for the cable guy because you have to call. It's
between 8
Well,
and 4.
well, it's between 30 and 60 days, So yeah, you can't get it on the fly. Well, at least not that I'm aware of, but yeah, it's good to plan.
If we're starting to look at when we use the VMware solution, on this one, I will have to say that I will give you the consulting answer. It depends. Because I'm not joking here. Each organization is at a different point in their cloud transformation, or whether it's even the cloud transformation. And everybody's unique into what they're looking to do. Like we mentioned earlier, are they looking to shrink their data center footprint because, I don't know, square footage, real estate has gone through the roof and they're going to double their cost if they stay with the data center they have?
Or
Is
you're
it
landlocked, can't
pardon me?
expand. Or you're landlocked, you can't expand, you're stuck and you need to grow
Exactly. So
more.
you
Yeah.
have this capacity need that you can't provide within what you have. So there are different ways or different times as to when people want to jump onto the Azure VMware solution. So it really depends on each of your organization's state and what your end goals are.
Mhm.
But we can say that there's really 4 main areas. So because you want to migrate as is, and I've known customers that have just said, I'm not in the business of managing data centers and I want nothing to do with that part. I'm in the business of managing the workload so that I can make money with my customers. So they want to migrate everything.
Right.
Some, as we mentioned, to reduce their data center footprint. Other is just to prepare for disaster recovery, because
Sure.
in a lot of cases, if you're doing a disaster recovery with your business, you need a site B, like
Those
a
colos.
literal disaster recovery site.
Right.
If you have multiple data center, you can use site A as a recovery for site B and site B as a recovery for site A. So that's not too bad, but you still need more capacity. If you only have one site, do you rent another site just for DR?
It's expensive too. And
That gets
is it gonna be
expensive.
cold or warm site? Yeah.
You have the cold or warm, the connectivity in between. All of that needs to be taken in consideration. So using a turnkey solution like Azure VMware solution to set up an environment that you can easily fail over to is a very cool position to be in. And modernize your workload. Now, modernize your workload. This is step 1, because you're moving workloads from on-prem to Azure VMware solution, but there's still VMs running in Azure on top of VMware. Because you have access to all of the Azure services that we mentioned, Azure Monitor, Azure Storage, all of the AI and other services that Azure can provide, you can start modernizing your application on your workload. But the fact of moving or migrating to Azure VMware solution is like step 1. You're not yet taking care or taking advantage of the cloud native solutions, but you're that much closer to them, so you can start leveraging them, and it buys you time.
Yeah, it's kind of like a lift and shift, but you're lifting your VMware environment to the cloud, and then after that, you can maybe refactor some web apps, use a service.
Exactly.
Like
Exactly. MS/learnlive-2022-0301B is where you will find the actual Learn module. It has a bit more details. Amy and I kind of go back and forth and discuss what this is. But if you want to actually read all of the specifics and have the links to the documentation, I highly encourage you to go back and complete the interactive learning exercises and watch the videos and practice and just get some new skills.